Welcome to the Pantheon Plus Rewind.
Good morning, afternoon, or evening, everyone. Welcome to episode 73 of the Pantheon Plus Rewind, our weekly podcast covering the upcoming MMORPG Pantheon Rise of the Fallen, with a focus on the community that surrounds it. In this show, we're going to be talking a bit about the just released content schedule for October, finding what's been lost in the MMORPG genre, chatting about what bank is right for Pantheon, and ending with the next leg in the journey with Dothane, Bel Iris, and the Dawn, Arakamel. So gather round, get comfortable, and join me, Desrin, and my savvy co-host, Theric, as we dive into the great world of Terminus with you, our lovely listeners. Please enjoy this week's Rewind. All right, Theric. What a week, man.
Mm-hmm.
What a week.
Yeah, what a week is right.
I cut my hair in preparation for the New World launch.
When you say cut, that might be an understatement. What you did was more of a massacre.
It was a massacre.
Locks.
100% absolute genocide to the hair follicles upon my head as I let my roommate have her way with the razor, basically, or the trimmer, I guess. But it's shorter than anyone ever wanted at this point. But it feels great. Nice. It feels great. And I told you I wasn't going to talk too much about New World stuff. And I jokingly say I cut my hair for that because I don't want any distractions, for the launch of a new game.
Wow, that's commitment. That is commitment.
Total jokes. But it's been a long time since I was part of MMO launch, and this one's been a kind of crazy ride. We've got Vela Company, the guild that combines the forces of Pantheon Plus, Nathan Napalm, Kid Lee, Disparate Worlds, and a bunch of others. That's been quite a blast, just kind of playing with a bunch of people and actually making new friends already.
Yeah.
It's crazy, right?
It's been great. It's been great. This week has been very unique for me, just because it's been something that hasn't happened in a long time, and the whole experience of the excitement around a new MMO launching, even if it doesn't turn out to be whatever it turns out to be, it's the experience of it has been something that we just haven't gone through in such a long time. And I forgot how much I enjoyed it. And, like you say, just running around in the game world and seeing people that seeing names, and you're like, oh, that person, I recognize them, or I've spoken to them once or twice on Discord.
Yeah.
It's been incredible.
Yeah. And since we're kind of a combined community with Vela Company, I'm kind of getting to meet folks that aren't even in the same, our little micro circles, that we have surrounding each of our individual communities. And it's really neat. And crazy thing, we've even got people in our company in New World here that haven't even played MMOs before. I was meeting a guy that he just kind of randomly got invited by a friend that was following Pantheon and following, I believe it was Nathan, not really knowing what they're getting into. And they just said, yeah, let's do it. And he's super cool. I love this. It's really special. Yeah,
that's what it's all about. Yeah, it is special. And that's what it's all about, like bringing people into the world, bringing people into this hobby, this genre that we love so much, and saying here's how cool it can be. And here's all the things that we can do. And, it's been a good experience so far. We'll talk about it as we go through the show, but there's been lots of relatable moments. And I think doing this podcast with you, it's sort of like all the things we've talked about here and other places, whatever, it's sort of brought those to reality. It's crystallized them a little bit, because it's like, oh yeah, I remember why we talk about this now, because this is an issue, or this is something that you experience in MMO, right? Like, we haven't really had that reality for a while, and it's making the things we talk about all that much more real. And I really appreciated that this week.
Yeah. Yep. Man, perfectly said. Perfectly said. But hey, we're already kind of like slipping here a little bit. So let's
that's right. We totally are.
Let's move forward with the show a little bit. And, we got to fervently thank our adventuring party who donated during our last YouTube premiere. So we've got Shurikan on the Dwarf Cleric, Sparrow on the Elf Ranger, Bounty Code on the Human Wizard, Annoying Llama on the Human Monk, Redbeard Flynn on the Darkmoor Summoner, Crowsinger with the Halfling Druid, and Ziplocks on the Darkmoor Rogue. So you guys are awesome. Really feel the love during all those, during the premieres that we have. You guys make it super fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah, super fun just to kind of be a part of that, the first hour of my Sunday morning. It's fantastic.
It's a great way to start. It's a great way to start the day on Sundays, because my Sundays at around noon tend to get a little shaky with my crappy sports team that I follow. So seeing all the people, support a show and join the adventuring party is the juice I need to get me through that crappy moment. So I appreciate.
I thought you were going to say commiseration, but maybe there is a little bit of that.
Maybe.
But yeah, if you guys want to join the adventuring party for next week, and you're here for the premiere on YouTube, you can go ahead and hit the donate button and let us know your future Pantheon race and class, and we'll send you a group invite. No, it'll at least put you in the graphic that you're seeing on the screen right now. So, and of course, all donations go to support the show, but mainly, we also aim to give back to the community as much as possible with like giveaways and stuff like that. So that's really what it's for. But yeah, let's move on with the show.
This week in Visionary Realms News and Notes. Okay, so let's start with the news as we always do. Now, I don't know if it's just me, Des, but it feels like the weeks are kind of going by a little faster ever since they started the content calendar, the monthly content calendar. It just feels like every week we have something new to talk about, and it's like the faster months go by, the closer we get to Pantheon, which is always a good thing.
Yeah.
So in this week, it sort of became more clear to me what kind of content locusts we actually are. And I'm stealing that term from Joppa. He used it on a previous roundtable, I think, describing Teom. But we are content locusts, and we will consume every content that is allowed. We're given access
every
to
single content
voraciously. Yeah, that's right. Every single content. So this content calendar we got for this month came out, and this is what's in store for October from Pantheon, from VR. So October 1st, they released the Dev Roundtable. This is the one with Ben Dean and Minus, where they answer VIP community questions. So we're actually going to talk about that in a second here. Mm-hmm. Coming up on October 14th, they've got developer live stream for this month. And this is it says the team is going to be exploring the world building and HDRP pipeline. So that's exciting. We have October 21st is the next newsletter. That's the monthly update for all things Pantheon related. And then again, the next roundtable after that for the VIPs is on October 29th. And so back full circle again. So these are really helpful for us to stay in touch with the development cycle and what's going on. And really, it feels like, Desert, it feels like that we just talked about the last developer roundtable not that long ago.
Yeah.
I'm still thinking about that one.
It's so well spaced out, right? It's perfect. I appreciate these so much.
Mm-hmm. And, the content is well produced and it's well put together. And this one, so we're going to talk about here, that came out on October 1st, featured, like I said, Ben Dean and Tony, Minus. I still feel weird seeing his name as Anthony or Tony, but he'll always be Minus to me. Community and marketing was the theme for this roundtable. And it was, like I said, released just this Friday. So it had two sort of main themes, like I said, community and marketing. The first one, the first really important point, and that was what Ben Dean said. He said, the next Dev Roundtable, like I said, they're going to showcase the HDRP pipeline. They're going to really explain it, break it all down, what it sounds like. It sounds like it's going to be a kind of a big reveal. And I think that they've sort of set the trail of breadcrumbs leading up to this fairly well, because Desiree, I know you and I have talked about the HDRP quite a bit in the last 2 or 3 shows, how it's been teased and now a little more. And I think we're about to get a really thorough look at it. Did you sort of get that from this?
Yeah, I actually really enjoy how the story has built up until now. You know, we've been prepared, the way has been laid, and now we get to hit the story's climax, kind of. And I hope I'm not reading into that too much, but that's what I'm feeling here, and I'm really excited.
That was the vibe I got too. Yeah, I feel like we're going to get a sort of a look at the big picture and a big understanding of how this is working, and I think it's going to be an important stream. So I think October is going to be a pretty good month. Now, the other piece they talked about was, or one of the other pieces was talking about how they can deliver content differently and different outlets for content. And they had sort of a joke about, you know, some of the more obscure social media like TikTok and OnlyFans, but they're not actually doing OnlyFans, so don't worry.
I don't know,
about that.
man. Like Kilsin, I think he could pull it off. He could pull it off, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, sorry. That was one of my favorite like moments of the whole step down table.
Kilsin Desert is a big fan.
I'm a huge fan.
Big fan.
Huge fan.
Huge fan. He might say he's your only fan. Oh man, hey, I don't care what they do. If they want to do OnlyFans, more power to them, man.
Hey, if it brings more
I'll
people,
sign up. Whatever you do.
If it brings more awesome people into the Pantheon community, I'm all for it.
Yeah, and I joke around about like TikTok is, you know, whatever. I'm old, right? TikTok is a young person's game, but hell, I'll sign up for it. If they put stuff out on TikTok, I'll sign up for it. It is
no cap. No cap.
Yeah, that's right. And then Mina sort of expanded on that, saying he likes the shorter video concepts. You know, he likes the idea of more shareable content, more easily consumable content of varied types. So not even just video, but like also audio. So releasing little, you know, something in a more digestible audio content format might be interesting. And that's not surprising to me to hear Minus say that, because he's very imaginative when it comes to this kind of thing. He's very creative with his ideas of how to put content together. So I would not be surprised to see more stuff like this. It reminds me actually, and they talked about it, the Monk sort of not reveal, but the Monk showcase that they did where Minus put that together. Example. Yeah. And they talked about doing something. Ben said that there has been discussion about doing the Wizard or the Enchanter next in a video of that type. But then again, he did say nothing's locked in yet. So just something to pique your interest a little bit. Minus also said something that's music to our ears, and we have heard him say it before, is that he is very interested in doing, getting content creator streams going with really organic gameplay. For those that have been following the channel for a while, you'll remember that we had that opportunity a little while ago when Minus was here with us at Pantheon Plus, and we got to explore some parts of Avenir's Pass and Hangor a little bit. Really good stuff. And it was at the time, I think it was the only real non-developer guided gameplay that had been seen at this point. So I'm looking forward to him, to VR utilizing that a little more and going to other content creators too, not just us, and not just advocating for us to get content. Like, give it some, let Nathan Napalm put a party together and run around a little bit, do a thing. Let Basgrim do it, like Disparate Worlds, do something like that. I think it's great. Yeah. And I would love to see more of that. So. And then the second real big part of this roundtable was talking about the timing of their marketing campaign and how important it is. And Ben, if you may or may not know, comes from background of the games journalism and other areas of the industry, and has a really keen sense for this. And he talked a little bit about how it's been really honed to a fine point about when you launch your big marketing campaigns. He said it's proven to be 3 to 6 months from launch. When you're 3 to 6 months out from launch, that's the most effective time. So they really want to be mindful of that, I think. And when they want to push Pantheon to a more mainstream audience, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and actually, I'm really glad they talked about this. I feel like marketing's a kind of taboo subject for a lot of developers, even transparent development companies that are very open with the community. It's just kind of something you don't really like to talk about, right? And them just kind of openly, saying, hey, we're kind of holding back until the time is like just right to make the most out of it. And that's absolutely needed for this project, just because we're working with limited resources, right? And so him kind of laying that out and just telling us what to expect is a really big deal to me. And it's something I kind of have been wanting for a while. It's just a clear cut, like, hey guys, like, what's your plans? And this is just a great general like overview of like, hey, we're not going to do anything crazy until maybe 3 to 6 months before launch, and now that I know that, I'm even more Pantheon patient.
Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see what they do, like, what does that look like? What are they talking about? What does mainstream, audience marketing look like for this company? Because we've never really seen that. I mean, they've put out some, some teaser trailers over the years, some things that you could consider more mainstream, but when we get to that point, I'm really interested to see what that looks like. So, and then the last point, just something that Kilsin talked about, was the VIP Discord. Now, recently, he opened it up to the champions. So if you're not only a VIP, but if you're a champion level pledge, you can now get into the official Pantheon Discord. And right now, he says, Kilson's saying that he wants to get about 500 champions in there. He says he has about 385 right now, but he wants to get to 500. And Desiree, I know you are aware of the player council that they talked about that's been elected by the VIPs to sort of help bring information to Kilson's attention. So he talked about this publicly a little bit. And he wants to get some champions on that sort of player council as well. So it's an interesting idea, and it's something that you and I have talked about as well. And I know that you're looking forward to, doing whatever is needed, and sort of like, looking forward to integrating that into the VIP Discord in a certain way.
Yeah,
right?
it just makes sense to have as many kind of, I don't know, a good analogy, fingers in every pie, kind of a thing. Like you got to be
eyeballs around the community.
Yeah, just like kind of tasting all the different like sides and thoughts, because as small as our community is, there's vastly differing opinions, and I'm a big fan of making sure that people aren't kind of left out and overlooked. And he's been very clear with the direction of that, and I think it's going to work out really well. And it's not a big deal either, which is I'm glad they kind of went through it, in the dev roundtable without like lingering on it too much, because it really is just more helpers, more, we're available. We are a part of the community, and why not? Like, let's just make sure that nothing goes under the radar. That's literally everything it is. And I just appreciate that they want to try stuff like that. That's really cool.
Yeah, I thought so too. I think it's a creative idea. So if you're a champion level pledge and you haven't joined that Discord, you are certainly able to go to the official forums and check it out. There should be a link there for you to join. The developer roundtable is on YouTube if you want to listen to it in full. There was a lot more than what we talked about. Some good stuff, some joking around too, so you can get to know the guys a little bit, as always. Oh, I won't bring up, I had the jokes about Minus in here as the notes, but I took them out because I'm like, people can go listen to it.
Oh yeah.
I can make fun of Minus all day, but I'm not going to do that just because he's so much fun. So that's the news for this week. Now let's talk some notes. And this is a fun question on Twitter that they put out. This is from in sort of the tavern talk category as they do it. The question on Twitter was, what do you feel is missing from today's MMORPGs? So that's a big question. And you can imagine there were tons of responses, and they identified, the usual suspects, I'll call them. A lot of people said challenge. A lot of people said community. A lot of people said class identity. So if you're listening to this show, I think you probably agree with most of those. So rather than rehash a discussion of our love of those tenets, which we all, pretty consistently do, I thought I'd make the discussion a little more interesting and find a few that weren't sort of thinking outside the box, ones that weren't always mentioned, maybe even debatable, maybe even unpopular. Because I think it's sometimes in those, opinions, those views, we can find truths that maybe we hadn't considered. So I wanted to hear some of the more nuanced responses. So it does pipe in here what you think of some of these. But the first one's from NDK, and they said, we can't turn back time. So what is missing is the new technology to make an experience more immersive. Like back in the day when the first login to an online world. And I just think that's a really good insight. I've mentioned it a few times, how people forget the ways that new technology makes games more memorable when you utilize something that's sort of cutting edge, sort of on the horizon of technology. And people forget that EverQuest required a 3D accelerator card to even run. You couldn't play EverQuest if you didn't have a 3D accelerator, which wasn't, it wasn't ubiquitous at the time. Not everybody had one. Yeah. Ultima Online, you needed a pretty serious internet connection to be able to play it. That's actually why I couldn't play it, because my internet connection sucked too bad. So, modern MMOs have done a lot on this front, and I think they've advanced the technology. I think, Desmond, would you agree with that? Or is that something that, speaks to you?
I think it's different. It's a different kind of advancement. We've, advanced graphics, that's one thing. Mm-hmm. But that's kind of the main thing that we've advanced. And I mean, to be honest, a lot of buzz right now is on like player counts, because of the New World queues and stuff like that. Their servers are capped at 2,000. And
right.
There's a little bit of, research into how many players are in other online worlds. And it's not a one-to-one comparison here, because obviously New World is action combat and it has to be very responsive, but turns out like World of Warcraft is around like 5,000 people, and that's right. A much bigger world, and its tab targets kind of simpler in the sense of like how responsive you have to be, but it did make me think we haven't really expanded on that much.
Right.
So it's not like, I get to log in the first time to my MMO where it's literally everyone on the same like server, not sharded or instance or anything like that. It's just like, I am in this world. If I go to this place, I will see everyone that is in that place. We haven't crossed that.
Yeah, isn't that strange that we haven't gotten there yet? Like, isn't that, you would think of all the things, the ways we've progressed technologically since the earliest MMOs, you would think that would have been the number one priority all along. Mm-hmm. And it's funny that it's kind of gone the other way. It's kind of like
more instance, we've more separation.
It's become a smaller world, like, isn't that strange? And I'm sure, people have lots to say about this. And if you're hearing this and you have, comments on this, please leave them in the comments on the video or in the, mm-hmm. Send us a line on Twitter, Discord, whatever. And because I think this is a really interesting topic, what areas of technology have advanced through the MMO development and what haven't. And I think with the point that, NDK is making here is that, this is something that's been forgotten. Yeah. New technology makes new MMOs memorable. Yeah. Like
logging into an online world with, hundreds, thousands of other people for the first time was super novel in, 1999. Like that was so new, it made a certain impression, right? Now, I feel like there's only so many things that we can imagine now that would cause that same feeling of newness, and just mm-hmm. unprecedented nature. And the main one that I can think of, it's like the elephant in the room, is like VR. I think being in a full like VR MMO that isn't like cheesy.
You mean Ready Player One?
Well, full dive would be like one thing, but I mean, even just like regular VR, but MMO, I feel like that would actually be a very novel experience, in a similar fashion of that first, late 90s feeling. But like many technologies, we can't really imagine them until they're, on the horizon. And so who knows, mm-hmm. maybe MMOs have other directions that they can go, but this is just a really great
that's
comment.
What I'm wondering.
Like, I mean, because it wasn't just saying, it's just nostalgia, you guys. It's like there's a reason for that nostalgia. So mm-hmm. really great stuff. I think this is the first time I've seen this person on Twitter too.
Me too.
Good job, NDK.
Yeah. Post more. We'll read
Yeah.
them. The next one was from Chinter 3 or Chinter. They said, so what's missing in MMO? They said, respect for players' time. And this one was interesting to me because I kind of feel the opposite. I feel like modern MMOs have way too much respect for our time, Like I feel like everything is kind of bite-sized and to allow for quick, gaming sessions, to allow people to pop in, pop out. There's a real fear of asking players to make a time commitment. But Chinter's saying the opposite. They're saying that, MMOs these days, they don't respect your time. I guess they're saying like I don't know exactly what they're saying. Do you understand this comment? Do you have a
we've got 4 words to go with here. So there's only so much.
So maybe no.
Like this phrase though, respecting players' time, usually has that context that you're talking about where, they're trying to make sure, everyone that has a, short playing session, like they can accomplish, X, or that they can't, fall too behind people that have a ton of time. And I'm a little tired of this argument, honestly, in the sense of that it should apply to literally every MMO. Because truth be told, the majority of MMOs utterly respect your time in the sense of you can basically do everything in a very short amount of time, especially with the advent of like boosting and such, where, you could exchange, 2 hours of your work life for potentially 80 to 100 hours of your MMO character's life. And I think those games should exist. But I absolutely do not believe that needs to apply to every game. And I think part of the specialness is lost when stuff is able to be shortcutted like that. So not that I completely disagree with you, Chinter, but I think there do need to be games again that just make use of a lot of time where you're not given any handicap because of your own out of game life. And it might sound harsh, but like I said, I just think that those games do still have a place. It just might not be for everyone. Yeah, I mean, it definitely isn't for everyone.
Yeah. At least make one MMO out there that doesn't respect my time. That's all I'm asking for.
Right.
Just make one. Right. That's all I need. The next one's from Gaming Fanatic, and they said what's missing is grouping together and having patience to get a common goal together. Everything in MMOs with people is hyperspeed, and I feel rushed. So, I definitely feel this question, and I feel this too when I do play modern MMOs a little bit. But I kind of also feel like, is this something that's missing from modern MMOs or from the modern MMO player? Is this an us problem or is this a them problem? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I kind of feel like it's a them, like it's an us problem because it's just okay, not every example is gonna be New World, but we're playing New World right now, so I have to go to it. You guys are like, there's a part of our company that's progressing really quickly and, focusing and doing a lot of focused work. Seriously, I'm running around just exploring worlds and I don't really, I do what I want and I sort of just free roam around and I'm very unfocused and trying to just get a sense of the game at this point. So I don't know. What do you think?
Man. Like you hit the nail on the head here, really. Because, in New World is a thing, it has been extremely funny to see some of the situations arise from this, from what we've become. One example, and obviously I'm not going to call people out here, and I hope that if you resemble this comment that you don't take offense, but there's a certain amount of tagging that happens in New World, as in if you have a quest objective that you need to take out, you need to do a certain amount of damage compared to other people. And there's a limit on how many people can all get credit for a thing. And a very poignant example is there's a quest objective and we have some folks that were getting very frustrated because they were not getting credit for the quest objective. And it's a funny suggestion to be like, well, did you ask anyone for a group invite? Did you did you talk to
Yeah.
anyone? And it's like, no. And then of course, everyone that has had this happen, if they get a group invite, then it's like, oh, they get credit on the next one. And that is just a small example of what I think proves your point, in that I think a lot of us have acclimated to, I don't know, I don't want to say like a solo MMO, but we think we know it all and we're just going to do it on our own. Mm-hmm. And even in a game that you wouldn't think you'd have to cooperate, it's actually becoming extremely obvious that it's not our default anymore.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. I know exactly what you're saying, and I agree with you. And it's kind of surprising, actually, that New World is, putting this experience forward, because I don't think people expected it as much.
I sure didn't.
I mean, it's not Pantheon, and it's not a group game like Pantheon's aiming to be. This is definitely much further on the spectrum towards what we're used to, but it's not, this isn't BDO. This isn't, a games that are very solo centric. So that, I think you're right. I think there's a little bit of acclimation that needs to occur. Yeah. The next question's from Matthew, and they said, how about taking away something like the ability to respec? I think you have to take the RP to heart and make it that every decision you make about your character is meaningful, so that people have stronger connections to their tunes. So it's an interesting point, because, he's kind of right that saying modern MMOs rarely make you commit to the choices that you're making. You always have some degree of backing out of it, right? And I know it's unpopular, and I think people will probably argue more vehemently against this than for it. But I do think that there's something to say about respecing. Basically, any ability to respec makes you a casual player, whether you want to be or not. Because if I know I can just redo it later. And I think it is something that I feel is missing from modern MMOs. And I know in again, New World, you can respec fairly easily. Oh, yeah. Pantheon has talked about this a little bit, about what that's going to be. We don't have anything written in stone yet about what this is going to look like, but it's a good point in my mind.
Oh, man. So I'm not going to say that I think this should apply to every MMO, but like many things, I want this game to exist that this person is talking about.
I want it to exist.
Just because I personally very much appreciate games that don't give you a back button. That like you have to just let it play out, or I don't actually know how to put this, but the game that keeps coming to mind, and I don't know if this is appropriate because it's been a while since I played it, was Outward, because there are some decisions you can make in Outward that, if I remember right, are like consequential. But in my head, I've always wanted a game that doesn't let you renege on your on your choices, just because when you encounter someone, it's actually this is going to get a little psychological. It's the choices as they made them, and not the choices as they made them in retrospect, because those are two very different things, including in real life. And so I want this game to exist. Do I think it should be Pantheon? Probably not. But I want to see this. I want to see how different would it look if you couldn't respec, if the decisions you made about your character just ended up being your character. Yeah, all of the failures and bad choices too. I want it to happen.
Again, that game. Just give me one. Just give me one game that's like this. I'll take it. It doesn't have to be the norm, I guess. The next comment's from Jacob Wolf. And this is something that's really relevant because it's just something we saw recently. They said zones you can visit for two completely different level brackets. So for instance, starting zones that could have a starting zone and an isolated part of the zone with a prerequisite to get in somehow, or like a higher level area for some end game. They say, let's see new players see things that they get to look forward to. It's an excellent point, and it's something we just saw with the Wild's End reveal from the last developer stream. We saw the starting city of the Halflings, so Hirith, the same zone as the Gate, which they described as being one of the highest level non-raid dungeons in Pantheon. So very cool point, and agreed 100% that that's missing from a lot of current MMOs.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Next,
That's just an easy yes.
It's an easy yes. I know. That's why I didn't ask you, because I'm like, I know what you're going to say. The next one's from, I'm going to butcher their name, but it's Why Live Lil? You Live Lil? I don't know. Anyway, but their point was really good. They said meditation. They said they missed the downtime between fights. And it's one of those things I feel is like, they're implementing social gameplay, and this is what that looks like. This is what social gameplay looks like, is having downtime. It's hard to sell because it sounds boring, in my opinion, but, when you experience it, you do understand why, they're talking about in the last, again, dev stream, the long run, 20 minutes of real time, from one end of the Wild's End to the other. And that's the kind of thing, it's sort of parallel to meditation, because you're just running. If you're with a group, you're talking to your friends, whatever, you're just chatting, you're just making conversation. So it is missing, I think.
Yeah, well, I got to hold myself back on this one, but before we start talking about like inconvenience and how it's a tool. But yeah, leave room for social behavior. That's really all it boils down to.
Yeah, man, the empty spaces, right? I know I always think of that in music composition or artwork, like there's value in empty spaces, and anybody who's ever, done anything of that nature knows what I'm talking about. So, and then the last one I had to include because it's just awesome. It's a good way to end this segment. It's the last comment from IP Dre. What's missing in current MMOs? Pantheon. So
exactly.
That was their comment. Just Pantheon. Yeah, that's why we're here. So it's at the end of the day, if something wasn't missing in modern MMOs, we wouldn't be doing this. We wouldn't be doing this podcast. Pantheon wouldn't be being developed. There's no reason for it to exist. There's a thirst out there that isn't being slaked by anything else at the moment, or anything that's even in development. Like a lot of these ideas, like I said, just make one MMO with this idea in it, at least we can have something to build on. So anything else to add here, Desmond, before we move on to the next segment?
Just a little thing, and I think I'm going to continue pushing this, is what you said. Let's just have one game that does this, or, and I would like to believe that we are entering an age of MMOs that actually thrives off of the niche. I follow several other MMOs on my Twitter, their development studios, or if they have multiple games, or just the one. But I follow a lot of them because they're very unique, and they're almost all indie, but they're striving to do something different, and they're probably not going to be the WoW killer, But I really hope with the rise of indie games over the last 10 years or so that we start seeing MMOs that we see that one MMO that, doesn't let you go back on your choices. We see the, one MMO that leaves all of this downtime or doesn't respect your time, or, just to have it exist. So we just know that we know what it looks like, and we're not missing out and imagining things, and I hope that's the age we're coming into. So
I agree. Yeah, well said, man. Absolutely. And that's it for this week's VR news and notes. When the Pantheon community speaks, we listen. So let's dig into the forums and fan projects to see what the discussion's all about.
All right, this week's community discussion comes actually from Kilsin. It's technically, Kilsin is a part of the Pantheon community, right?
Technically, yeah.
So he's posting a thread on the official forums called Community Debate in-game banks. The question's pretty straightforward. Should there be one? How big should it be? And should it be shared across your account? Yeah. So first of all, I just got to throw this in there. So it's good to remember that when VR posts these threads, it's just to get discussion going, right? Of course, they have an idea for how they want banks to be in the game, but gladly they do put the question out there to the community to talk about. And I'm sure they do take answers into account in some way, but But yeah, I just
Yeah.
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, I think just in the last alpha roadmap update, one of the things they mentioned was their banking system. They've got the design approved. I think that's the stage it's at. Design approval, I think, is what they said. So just, something to keep in mind. So like you say, they're not looking for like, how should we do this? It's like, no, they have an idea. They're just trying to, this is just a community interaction kind of thing.
And that's why I just want to preface a little bit, because I feel like there's some folks that are like, man, why are they asking this? But yeah. Anyway, so, how should banks be, basically? And first of all, we've got Byproducts kind of starting us off, right? He says, we're going to need space for all the trade skill mats we'll never use, the environmental glyphs we don't need at the moment, old gear that just looks cool, new gear that sucks but looks cool, twink gear for that alt enchanter we swear we're going to make, stacks of food and drink we bought, unfinished fan fiction drafts, and so many other things. We're going to need...
Has Byproducts been playing over my shoulder like all my years playing MMOs? Is this like, they seem to have like a camera on the way that I play, because this is exactly what happens to me.
I'm unfortunately experiencing this right now. I'm running around with my inventory half full in New World because I can't bring myself to delete things, and my storage is full. It's a problem.
They give you so much storage. How can your storage be full already?
I've found a way.
So much.
I've found a way. But yeah, so like this is just so true. I mean, I obviously hoard a ton, and to kind of bring it back. So furthermore, Byproducts ads for sharing. I think it would be better to just share a couple of slots if you're going to do that. Otherwise, each character should have their own bank space. And we're going to be talking it kind of focuses on sharing, I think, because the rest of this, most people generally agree on. But yeah, it's good stuff. Byproducts, you know us too well.
Yeah, the idea of shared between characters is kind of interesting, because there's like two ways of looking at it. If you ask me, like either if you look at the MMOs, like your characters are all like your family, right? Not even like in an RP sense. Like these are my toons, these are my children, if you will, right? It makes sense that they would all have access to the same bank account or bank space. But if you think of them differently, if you look at it from a different perspective and you consider them, each unique individuals unto themselves in this world, then it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's yeah. We'll get into it. So we've got Big Dog Chris has a few thoughts here. So a shared stash between characters is great. Makes transferring items and cash between them safer and easier without losing much. You may have some people who may create more characters just to get bank space for their main, but that's a lot of hassle. Maybe add a feature so that players can pay in-game currency to expand their bank slots and help keep the cash out of the economy. So just adding a sink,
Mm-hmm. I know people definitely create characters for bank space, for storage space.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's nothing new, but definitely something that people do to try and just squeeze that much more out of the game than they are really given to use.
It's funny because Diablo 2 Resurrected just launched, right? And I'm not playing, but this is what I always think of when I think of like characters just for bank space, because it's known as muling.
Totally true.
You're a mule, and
yes.
I've seen so many, as an example, like Desrin Mule 11, Desrin Mule 12, just just to have as many places to hoard your stuff as possible. Maybe or maybe not that might have existed back in the day, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it's definitely did. I think you just outed yourself as a hardcore mule herder.
It's true. You got to do what you got to do. People would do that if there isn't, enough space. So it's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, it is a response to a deficiency or a response to something that maybe could be improved upon.
Yeah. Actually, Psych here, hopefully I pronounced that right, seems to also support a large shared bank that you can expand with in-game currency. They point out that not having a shared bank means players have to trust another to transfer, which could result in a lot of like petitions when a person turns out not to be trustworthy. So it like,
that's true.
Yeah, but at the same time, there's that social layer, right? In the point, it is, they have to trust someone, and I'm sure. Well, I've had this happen. I've had people actually, take my stuff by doing a character to character transfer before. I was actually just talking to someone about this. I was in Guild Wars and had someone transfer, and they transferred everything except for ectoplasm, which is like kind of a currency in Guild Wars.
It's a high level craft.
Yeah, and I was like, "Hey, bro, where's my ecto?" It's like, "You didn't give me any." I'm like, think I did.
You were the victim of an ecto scam. Oh my gosh.
Right. So, but at the same time, while the bad experiences like can arise, I don't know. I feel like is a shared bank just like good quality of life, or is it actually kind of defeating one of the social interactions and, potential for negative interactions? Like, is that?
Yeah, I tend to fall more on the side of it being a quality of life feature than the social interaction. And I'm all for things that promote social interaction. I've said that many, many times. This is one of those things where I think that you're not going to get a lot out of the social interaction that comes through this. It really doesn't have a positive side as much. It's got a much bigger negative potential side.
If anything, it's almost like the character to character or player to player transfers might just not be the best solution, if anything. Like there's got to be some alternative. Yeah. Now, whether or not it's a shared bank, I'm sure there are other solutions out there. So, and actually, Manuk here says they're not a fan of shared banks. They pointed out that, they say that they think it makes it easier for like RMT, so real money trading, that, bots or farmers and stuff will kind of like take advantage if it's like too easy to just transfer stuff between all their characters. So those are kind of an interesting take. I don't know if I think that's actually really true. I feel like shared bank maybe doesn't help that so much as other factors.
I don't know either. I was sort of wondering the same thing. I was hoping you had a better answer than I do, because I'm not sure, because I really have never done any kind of real money trading in any MMO ever.
You know what? If I had ever done any, I would never tell. So
that's exactly what I said to Minus one time, and he responded to me. He was like, "Yeah, I've done it." I'm like, "Really?" Like, man, I would never admit that. In that, me saying that is probably, you're like, "Oh yeah, then you've definitely done it." But I honestly never have.
Actually, I have to bring this up because this is just so funny, because we're just talking about Diablo 2. And I actually, the only reason that I was able to play EverQuest 2 was I purchased a computer. I built my first computer ever with the money that I earned by selling items on Diablo 2 and putting them on a cash card, because I wasn't old enough to have a bank yet.
Wow.
And oh yeah, man. But that like my gaming history started with selling stuff on Diablo 2 using my parents' like terrible like HP Pavilion that barely played the game. No jokes.
Wow.
But
that's crazy.
Yeah, so
what a way to start. What a entry into the economics of video games.
Now you know why I had so many mules, right?
Yeah, it all comes together. Oh my gosh, it's all making sense now, Desmond. This is your the matrix of your. I was going to say criminal enterprise, but the matrix of your shady MMO
That's
past.
where it all got started, man.
I see. Gotcha.
But Manuk does add like a few examples of like what they would like to see, and they would prefer banks tied to each race's main city. Maybe even specific banks for like class-specific or faction-specific storage. Maybe even requiring certain faction levels. or he even mentioned like a writ system to withdraw a deposit, which I'm like, might be a little tedious there, honestly. But
Yeah.
but yeah, they have a lot of ideas for like specific storages and all sorts of stuff, which is funny. They kind of end their post with saying they're not a huge fan of tedious inventory management, but they also, I think they just want like storage to be a little more meaningful and not just kind of like mindless. So I get that.
Yeah.
I get that.
I like the tying it to the home city, the class city. I like that idea.
I think a lot of people in this community are more amiable towards that. Like, well, for example, we've got Vandrad here. Vandrad thinks banks should be per character and per city. Nothing more, no global banking. So I'm thinking Vandrad doesn't seem to support like shared banks as well, right?
Right.
Which is kind of the typical way to do banking, right? You got it tied to your city.
Yeah, I mean, keep it simple. I mean, there's always some logic in just keeping it simple and not making it overly complicated. And I think that's where whenever I hear Vandrad's comments, they speak to that part of my MMO mindset. Like, just a simple solution is usually the best. But I'm not sure about that.
Well, and it's funny because without shared banks, there has to be some sort of workaround, right? And Jothany kind of points that out. If there was like, as long as there's in-game mail, shared account storage shouldn't really be necessary. Now, Kalindil doesn't seem to like mailing things to their own characters and prefers to simply like kind of copy the EverQuest solution, I guess. But I was thinking about this because I just had to do this in the Vanguard emulator. And I got some gear on one character and I'm like, send it to the other. And I got all these crafting components. So I was sending my crafting character. And thinking about this, I for some reason, I'm not super opposed to this, even though it's ridiculously tedious. And I can't put a finger on it. Is it just something we're used to?
I think so. And I think we've gotten very, in-game mail as a way of transporting goods has become very part of the MMO mindset, I think. So correct me if I'm wrong, New World better than I do at this point, but is there an in-game mail system in New World? I didn't think so.
There's not.
Isn't that strange that there isn't? Like
you have to walk up to someone and give them a thing. That's how it works.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Keep it simple.
Keep it simple. Keep it simple. Now, so there's actually a lot of interesting ideas in this thread, and probably don't have time to go over all of them. One of them was from Lee Volan, who recommended maybe banks should actually be able to share things between them as long as like cities are allied. And basically adding that, like faction and all that should kind of matter and give certain like perks. Like I can transfer money between these two cities because they're allied, kind of like old kind of transfers and banknotes and stuff, which is, interesting stuff. Like I said, there's a lot of interesting ideas here and we probably don't want to linger too much, but yeah,
right.
I don't know how I feel. I think that's
like
a
good one.
It would make sense.
That
game,
last point. Yeah, that last point kind of made me think of like, what if in Pantheon, and this is just speculation or just ideas, but what if certain races had shared banks and certain races didn't? So like the ogres could share, banks. If you had an ogre and a Darkmer and a Scar character, you had access to like a shared, although it's weird to have the Scar even have a bank. Like what is that even about? Like it doesn't seem like it makes any sense. But on the other, you know what I'm talking about? Like if you delineate them by good, neutral, evil, maybe, and I know that's Joppa said that's not really how they're doing it.
Joppa with this
could
podcast.
You? I know. Could you bank between your own, alignment? I guess you would say. I don't know. Interesting stuff.
Yeah.
It's a good conversation. I like this conversation.
Yeah, it's going in a good direction, and I definitely want folks to jump in here and maybe spice up the conversation a little bit, is one thing I noticed out of this very like simple prompt is we have folks in the community that are on all different sides of this debate. It seemed really balanced, actually. Like people that, want shared, don't want shared, want local banks, want global banks. It's like kind of all over, which is an interesting problem for VR to solve. That's for sure.
It's like a lot. It's similar. It reminds me of the coin weight and like encumbrance debate that crops up once in a while, right? And there's a very split community on a lot of that issue in particular. I think this is another one of those ones that you get quite the split, and there's no right answer. There's no 100% right answer. It's not like it's not like some of the more black and white issues.
Yeah.
It just depends. It depends on how you want your game to play. Like what do you want it to do? What are you going for? Which model supports what you're aiming for? So we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. Let's throw one more in here. So we've got Bolda.
Sure.
And this was a really interesting one for me because it kind of sparked something in my brain here. So part of their post says that potentially they could launch without a shared bank, but then add it later in an expansion as they say an enticement. But I thought that was really an interesting concept overall. A lot of the MMOs we played, lately, except for, current situation, have been out a while and they have years and years of these like quality of life improvements that we really get used to. Because, these games have matured just a long time. So the question is like, is it okay for us to just expect games to launch with 10 years of quality of life? Or is a launched game supposed to kind of have some inconveniences and not have all of that, ease that comes?
Well, yes, that's a great point, and it's a discussion that it's a trigger for a discussion that I don't want to do, but we will do at some point, and that's about creating inconvenience for the purpose of a cash shop, right? Creating problems that you can solve later with a cash shop. And I'm not trying to trigger anybody. I'm just bringing this up because this is my take on why you see some of these games launch with severe inconveniences and things that they know quality of life improvements can be made on, because they're like, we can sell this later to you as a quality of life thing through our cash shop. Yeah.
If that's another day's discussion, I suppose we'll put it off for another day, because that's a pretty big one.
Just put that in the back of your brain, and we'll come back. We'll circle back around to that 10 episodes from now.
I didn't realize last episode was actually our 10th that we've done together. I
didn't realize that either.
I didn't think about
like
it, and I should have said something, but it's all good.
Oh, man.
We're on number 11.
Happy 10th anniversary.
Okay, so let's I guess move on here. So we've got some fan fiction highlights. Luckily, we are blessed in our community with a lot of fan fiction actually, and growing. I'm noticing where we've got even more people. But so we've got Byproducts did release Chapter 3, Talent and Consequences, or Talent and Choices. On the 25th, and Crowsinger had graced us with the Sway of Storms, Chapter 11. So both of these are on the official forums, but I'd be remiss if I didn't shout out that Crowsinger's is actually as an article posted on Pantheon.plus as well.
Yeah, man, In the Sway of Storms is really becoming her epic tale. This is Chapter 11 already. I mean, it's crazy how it's grown and developed, and it's just awesome.
Yeah, and then according to her on our Discord, she's plenty into Chapter 12, and it's cool. She's doing the art alongside it as well. It's a cool package.
It is.
Now,
very cool.
Lastly, I wanted to take a little space here to thank our listeners, or presumably our listeners. We don't have any new introductions today from the forums, but I've noticed that a few of you go and welcome new people that we've shouted out on the show, and it's super awesome. You guys are great, and I'm really glad that we have folks that are so willing to jump in and make new people feel at home, and it really validates why we announce these, on the show, just to get more people to say hi. And these are people that might potentially become your lifelong friends in the future, and so it's just really cool to see that.
100%. Yeah, 100%. It's the lifeblood of what we're doing here, and what this Pantheon Plus is about. What Pantheon when we play is going to be about. It's going to be about the people you've made, the connections you've made, and the networks. And it's not it's not going to be all for nothing. There's value in this, in the moment and long term. So this is the best community I've ever been a part of, and I will also just say thanks and express gratitude for it.
Awesome. Well, that is it for this week's community discussions.
Sit back and relax. It's time for the lore you know. All right, so on to the lore you know, and usually I have a nice little fun intro for this part that I have written out and thought ahead, but this week I neglected to do that because I, for some reason, didn't think ahead. But anyway, I'm remembering from where we are at the tale. We are reading the tale of the Bait Part 2. And last week we heard Dothane arrive at Calcalar, which is the sort of petrified forest with Bel Iris, and they found Arakamel. And there was a very intense scene where Arakamel is sort of introducing himself to Bel Iris, or making her acquaintance, I guess you might say. And we're about to learn a little bit more about what Dothane's mission and his purpose being here actually is. So I hope you've got headphones on. I hope you're in a comfortable spot with a good drink and time to dim the lights. And let's carry on with our next tale of the Bait Part 2, written by Pantheon's lead writer, Mr. JN Gerhart. You ought to have stayed hidden, Bel Iris spoke, one of her twin voices raspy and strained, the other so light and graceful I thought she must have another head hidden under her hood. Fortunately, we fared well enough to proceed. I exhaled forcefully, as much from disappointment as satisfaction at her revelation. The Archai reset her hood and tilted her head to the side. Were you badly injured? She asked. That night, we rested at the edge of a simmering pit of lava, the heat of which gave my body aches. Arakamel had arranged several of the fallen trees in the form of a V, giving a measure of protection from the ash storms that were said to frequent Calcalar, though I could not imagine him needing such protection for himself. With the peerless blade of Moonfell, he had cut a wide seat out of a stump of one of the trees, with a large, spiny hide over the back. In the light of the lava pit, the exposed mosaic of the petrified rings draped a veil of colors over the black and gray of everything else. In his seat, Arakamel looked like a warlord of myth, resting on his thrones after years of bloody conquest. Yet I wondered if any other mortal had ever seen him there, besides the Mother Mage and myself. He was reading me, Bel Iris spoke, her voice is gentle but unapologetic. Or rather, the dire was. I was in no danger. I had no reply, though my gaze must have betrayed a childlike concern. Very well, she restated. I was in no great danger. I nodded out of respect, though I could not disguise the distance growing in my heart. I had begun to despise this adventure, the command of my king, and even the Mother Mage herself. I did not need to leave Cadassa to learn that I was but a vapor in this world. I need only look to causes. I did not need to crack my helm and my skull to learn that I had no great power within myself. I need only hold hammer. Before Bel Iris and Arakamel, two titans of Calcalar, I was like an infant struggling against his wrappings. Even now, I felt as though Bel Iris was waiting to put me to sleep before resting herself. After a moment of silence, she rose and looked over the radiating pit. None of this will work without you, Dothane. Without hammer, I wanted to object. It was the weapon she wanted, not the dwarf. And it was the cold of Tenebris that I wanted, not the ever-burning, false winter of Calcalar. I would have liked to have waited to give you this, but I believe it is now time. The Archai pulled something small from within the folds of her robe, a blue, radiant crystal. For a moment, it floated just above her head, spinning softly before she snatched it up and set it on my knee. I trust you know Winter's Sorrow, the Song of Ryfel. your queen? I nodded, puzzled. Winter's Sorrow was a ballad of hope in dark times, written by our high immortal queen Ryfel for the faithful dwarf who has lost a loved one to the endless winter of Tenebris. It had a peculiar enchantment within its melody, meeting deepest sorrow with deepest hope. Thus, in our Thane house with the legacy of Vitreous, it was spoken and sung as often as others might a hymn of prosperity or cry of war. At the mere mention of our ballad, the words began to stir within me. Belle Iris put a finger to my lips. Not now, Lord Thane. The stone is one of my blossoms, instruments I have fashioned for specific cause and purpose. She motioned for me to put the blossom away, which I did with feigned comfort. We shall discuss its use at the proper time. For now, keep the blossom safe as a fragile flower, and do not utter a single line of winter's sorrow, lest you kill the dawn and me. At this, she passed on to Arakhamel, leaving me a puzzle box of longing, fear, and yet curious elation. Their conversation was short, predictably one-sided that it was. Soon Belle Iris was by herself, sleeping peacefully on her back. I felt the weariness of day deliver me to slumber, even as I sat against the petrified stone. The sound of flesh being torn apart woke me the next morning. Though it was well past dawn, the thick air of Kakalar muted the brightness of the sun, which I later confided to Belle Iris as to why I had slept so late in the day. Arakhamel was off his throne, the carcass of whatever large, armored creature that dwelt in the forest, hanging upside down from a rope thrown over a tree. I should say that half of the beast was hanging, for the side with the head was cooking nicely on a spit over a lava pit. I was famished at the time, though that feeling would soon be taken care of. The dawn was resting against the trunk of a tree, next to the severed corpse of the creature. With one clawed hand, he reached into the body and withdrew a large chunk of meaty flesh, the fibers so fresh they smoked in the air. Hot blood ran over his hand, pooling in drips beneath his fingers. Then he stared at the meat and waited, watching it bleed in his palm for a curious amount of time. I did as well, unaware that I was so fixated until the meat began to disappear into his hand. It did not happen all at once. At first, his desaturated skin began to ripple, pressing against the edges of the meat like a swarm of worms feeling for moist ground. Then, in sickening silence, ribbons of the warm flesh began to pull into his hand, that is to say, into his physical hand. The creature's flesh dissolved like salt beneath a stream of water, eaten away until there was nothing left. Not even the blood that had pooled beneath his palm remained, and I swear that even the hairs on the back of his hand were left clean. I swallowed hard, suddenly aware that for all of Arakhamel's physical might, it was what dwelt within the dawn that made him a terror, the dire, a thing which defied comprehension, just as what I had witnessed defied explanation. I thought of the same hand dug into the neck of Belle Iris, and I wondered what manner of war had been fought between them the previous day. For the first time in my life, Hammer seemed unfit for a battle. I realized that Arakhamel's black eyes were turned on me, even as he tore another piece of flesh from the side of the beast and waited for his hand to consume it, plainly as any other mortal might take a second serving of well-cooked meat. Perhaps it was good to be unlike these two titans, I thought. Arakhamel moved past me and toward the lava pit, crouching to check the doneness of the meat. My eyes fell upon the nape of his neck, a sudden charge of fight welling in my hands. Yet it was replaced by terror, for in the very spot I had aimed my weapon the day before, there was carved a rune of blood. The marking was burned into the back of Arakhamel's neck, like countless others that decorated the tablet of a body. My feet froze in place as I stared at the spot, the wound suddenly oozing in a fresh flow of blood. As if aware of my presence, the blood leaped toward me in a dark, liquid hand. It covered my face, silencing the memory of that day in a sanguine sleep. All right, another lore segment. We don't have Drac here this week to do the lore sound effect, so I'll try to remember to put it in there. Hopefully, I did. Yeah, that brings us to the end of episode 73. And Des, I know that I think we did pretty good avoiding all going too New Worldy on this podcast. I know we've both been holding back. You messaged me earlier in the day. You're like, I don't know if I can do it. I'm all in New World right now. And I'm like, yeah, so am I.
Yep. We're trying to save you guys from going through that. I'm sure the entire internet is full of it right now. So, if we can help assuage, we will.
Yeah. And if you're into New World, great. Please come join us if you like. We're more than happy to have you. If you're not, don't worry. This show is not going to become New World
Yeah.
podcast. It's going to stay a Pantheon-focused podcast for all your Pantheon needs. And so it's time for me to go and watch my football team hopefully do better than they did last week. And Desrin, you have New World to go play, so I'm sure you're going to go do that and probably be in a much better mood than I am. But fingers crossed, we both have good experiences. Maybe, who knows?
Yep.
So,
good luck.
Yep. Good luck. Thank you. Yes, and to you. But thank you to everyone for hanging out with us today. As always, if you like what we do, please leave a like on the video. Please subscribe and turn on the bell for notifications on our YouTube channel. If you have a podcast, if you're listening to this in the audio version, head over to your podcast provider, leave a review. If you're on iTunes, 5-star reviews are always helpful, whether that's on the US iTunes store or the Canadian iTunes store, or wherever you are in the world is fine, because those are all very important and help our show grow and expand and reach new people and bring people into the Pantheon community. So I hope everyone has a great week to follow, and we will be back and we will see you next week. So till then.
So long, everyone.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Pantheon Plus Rewind. Pantheon Plus is not affiliated with Visionary Realms. Be sure to check out our Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube channels under the name Pantheon Plus. You can follow Theric at Pantheon Theric on Twitter, and Desrin at Desrin Does also on Twitter. And you can stay up to date with all things Pantheon at www.pantheon.plus. Until next time, cheers, and thanks for listening.